All right, let's talk about electromagnetic radiation, known as EMR. So the EMR comes from the name right there. So it is a series of waves that carry different energies. And so before we actually talk about the different types of electromagnetic radiation, we want to go over some vocabulary words to make sure we understand parts of a wave and the relationship before we actually talk about the different types. So let's go over some vocab. So the crest is the top of the wave, the trough is the bottom of the wave. So if we were to label this really quick, this would be an example of a crest, and the bottom would be an example of the trough right here. Okay. So the point from one point of a wave to the exact next point of the wave, such as a crest to a crest or a trough to a trough, is going to be called the wavelength. So basically from crest to crest, from trough to trough, or midpoint to another midpoint, those are all wavelengths. So what are wavelengths, right? A wavelength, so that's the first vocabulary, another vocabulary word we're going to talk about. A wavelength is the length of one wave. So how long is one wave? So here are two waves right here. So this is one wavelength there, and the other wavelength would be here. So it's good to compare all crests or all troughs. So we have different wavelengths. So one is shorter than the other. The other vocabulary word is called frequency. So frequency is how many waves can pass by in 1 second. So after 1 second, how many waves swung by? Okay, so now let's think about the relationship between wavelength and frequency. Okay, when you have a short wavelength, so they are close together, like this top one. So this top one is a short wavelength. Then how often can this wave pass by in 1 second? Versus a long wavelength, how many of those can pass by in 1 second? What kind of relationship do they have? We say that they have an inverse or indirect relationship. What does that mean? It means that they have an opposite relationship. When one is short, okay, so when you have a short wavelength, that means you have a high frequency. More waves can pass by every second, okay? But when you have a long wavelength, not many waves can pass by every second, so we say it has a low frequency. So when you say it has an inverse or indirect relationship, we are saying that they have an opposite relationship. So when one goes up, the other one goes down. So when the wavelength is, so if I put an up arrow here, that means the wavelength is long, then the frequency is low, meaning it doesn't happen that often. But when the wavelength is short, right, they are close together, then we know that the frequency is, that the frequency is high because we can have more waves every second, right? So then our next vocabulary word is energy. So energy is the ability to do work. And energy is directly related to our vocabulary words. So let's talk about them. The first one is the relationship between energy and frequency. So let's look at the picture here. We can tell that this top picture right here, right, is way more frequent. There's a lot of waves happening in 1 second. So let's think about it. The more waves you have, boom, 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 do you think you have high energy or low energy? Yes, you have high energy, right? When you have this other picture down here, right? It's like waves are not happening that often, then the energy must be low, right? So if the energy is low here, then let's think about what kind of relationship they have, okay? So energy and frequency then are going to have a direct relationship. Direct relationship means that they go in the same direction. So they either both go up or they both go down. Okay, so both go up or both go down. So if frequency goes up, that means it's happening a lot. Boom, 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 boom. That means you have high energy. If the frequency is low, not happening that often, then the energy is also low, right? Okay, so what does that mean when we're trying to compare energy and wavelength, right? So let's look at the picture again. When the length is very short, right? That means that it's going to have high energy, right? Because it's happening more often. The length is very, very short. That means it's going like boom, 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 boom. That means it's high energy. But here, if you look at the length, it's very long, right? So it's less frequent, it's long, it's slow writing, then that means it's gonna have a low energy, right? So if it has a low energy, let's think about the kind of relationship that energy and wavelength have. Energy and wavelength then have an inverse or an indirect relationship. Remember, that means that they have an opposite relationship. When one goes up, the other one goes down. So let's talk about it. When wavelength goes up, remember, a length that goes up means it's really long. So when it's really long, the energy goes down, right? So they're opposite. When the wavelength is short, right? That means they're really close together. They're going boop, 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 boop. Then the energy is very, very high. So you have to understand these relationships, okay? So now let's get to our different types of radiation. Okay, so there are 7 different types of radiations. You have radio, microwave, infrared, visible, ultraviolet, X-ray, and gamma, okay? So some of these you recognize, like radio and microwave, maybe like X-ray on the other side. But if you look at the picture here, so this picture of your wavelengths are right here, right? So you can tell that the radio waves are really long, and then the gamma rays on this side are really, 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 really short, okay? So that is the range of the types of radiation that we have. So if you look here, we can't see 6 of them with our eyes. There's only one type of radiation we can see. It's the one that says visible. So this is the one that we can see with our eyes. It involves 7 different colors, and then the mix of them is all the different colors that we see. So the 7 different colors that we can see is labeled Roy G. Biv, right? So you have red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. Okay, I'm going to spell it out for you really quick, just in case you need the spelling. Okay, so those are your 7 different colors. These are the only types of radiations that we can see with our eyes. Everything else we can't see. Okay, there are different types of animals that can see different types of radiation, but colors are the only ones we see. So pretty good to go on the colors. So now we can apply what we learned, the vocabulary words that we learned before, and apply it to our 7 different types of radiation. Okay, so I sort of rewrote it down below here. So RMI, VU, XG, and then your 7 colors I highlighted in yellow here, so you know it goes with this visible light. Okay, so on the radio side, okay, if you look at the picture, you know that it has a long wavelength. Okay, it's like the length of like a football field. It's one wave is really long. Okay, because it's really long, it has low frequency, right? Because it's not happening, not many waves are passing by every second, and it's low energy. Okay, and this is what I call like the L side. It's long, low, low. So the radio waves are really, really really long, really low energy. Then everything is opposite on the other side, right? That means gamma are very, very short wavelengths. They're so short. So many of them are happening every second. So they have a high frequency and therefore a high energy. We have time to like go over it. Like basically like radio waves are like super safe, like gamma rays, high energy. They can kill you, right? And that's why they use like very concentrated gamma radiation for like cancer treatment. And think about really intense chemotherapy, it just like kills everything. Um, but if it's not like regulated, then it just like kills you, right? That's why ultraviolet like is pretty dangerous. Like that's why you wear sunscreen. If you don't wear sunscreen, it's bad for you. Skin cancer is real, everyone. And that's why x-rays are also dangerous. That's why you generally wear padding at the dentist. You can't get x-rays that often because it's not good for your body. It's like really heavy radiation that can get to you. So yeah, so this is our chart. And now you're going to answer questions following it. So for example, question 1 asks, which one has higher energy? So you're going to compare ultraviolet and x-ray and be like, okay, which side is it on? So ultraviolet, it's like my sun, or x-ray, which one has higher energy? X-ray is further to the right, so this is the correct answer. So I can give you a second and you can sort of try the rest on your own. You can pause it really quick and then I'm just going to reveal the answers. Okay, so hopefully you got this right. The most tricky one was probably this bottom one because you're looking at your colors. But Roy G. Biv, right, is in the same order as your radio to gamma rays, okay? So think about I is infrared. So the color red is next to infrared. And then the V for violet should be next to ultraviolet, right? So the violet, ultraviolet, is on this side, right? It's higher energy, and then red is next to the infrared, so it's on the low energy side this way. Okay, so on the longer wavelength side. So yellow light is closer to our red side, so it was lower energy. Okay, so hopefully that wasn't confusing for y'all.